Welcome to Paley Front Row, part of the Paley at Home series presented by Citi.
All right, guys, let's fill these seats with some amazing cast members. Playing Marigold Goldie Brandyfoot, it's Sarah Zwangabani. Daniel Wayman plays, of course, the stranger. Daniel, join us. Our young Numenorian statesman, Kemen Leon Wadham. Welcome. The Queen is in the house, Queen Regent Muriel. It's Cynthia Addai-Robinson. Please give a warm welcome to Nazanin Boniadi, the heel-turned-leader of the Southlands, Bronwyn. Charles Edwards joins us playing the Ward Kellenbrimbor, the one I've asked, of course. Charles. And he goes by Benjamin Walker, but he prefers the High Elven King. Give it up.
And
welcome, guys. It's a busy time for you. Congratulations on this epic show. It takes more than a village. It takes hundreds, if not thousands, of people to make this show, and you should feel very proud. Let's just talk a little bit. I got a chance to talk to you guys before this show came out. I had no idea what to talk to you about because there was so many unknowns. It must be such a relief now to see how it's being received, to see just the passion out there. Just give me a sense, first of all, how it's felt to unfurl these first 7 episodes of this epic season. Relief?
well, neither did we know what to talk about when we last spoke.
Yeah.
Couldn't say anything. We can say even less about episode 8, which is coming out on the 14th. But no, it's been, I think we all feel a huge sense of relief to be able to because most of the time we're watching it at the same time as you guys are. There's lots that we don't know about the show, which is revealed each week.
And not to mention, this is a show, as you can tell from seeing it on the big screen, this wasn't shot in a week, a month, 6 months. I mean, this is as epic as you get. So talk to me about the last couple of years for you, though. It must be such a strange sensation to have this wonderful, it's not a secret you're in the show, but did you feel like you were bottling something up for the last couple of years? And
it's like, how much time do you have?
Let's turn it into a therapy session.
Yeah, I've been bottling it up for years.
It's a pandemic baby.
Yeah.
It's something that was born throughout the pandemic, and we bonded more because of it, because we were in New Zealand together for almost 2 years, stuck there. Great place to be stuck, but also away from our support systems and our family and friends. So we became each other's family or each other's fellowship.
What has it been like to watch this show, whether it's on your TVs or in a theater like this? Because, again, it's such a large cast. There are multiple storylines going that, yes, are converging, but I would think you just feel like you're part of a tapestry, and then to see the final with all the effects and the music must be fascinating.
And like Naz was saying, that we'll never have an objective view of it because we participated, but and maybe you agree, but the greatest joy is that we do like each other, and surprisingly. Well, I mean, you like most of the time when you're doing press, you're just lying. And we got along great. It's just not true. But on this one,
professional actors, so
exactly. I do my best work in the press, but we actually do like each other, and the greatest joy of seeing it is seeing your peers excel at what they're good at.
Absolutely.
So we know it's going to happen with the Harfoots, but then to see Sarah come to life, that is a real joy that really counterbalances the fact that we don't have an objective view of it, and that's the greatest pleasure. And that ties into seeing the wardrobe at large, or hearing the music making your performance make sense. That all the components.
See, it's important with the music. It makes it important.
Well, yeah, like, oh, that's what they were going for. I thought that was funny. But no,
That's sadly true.
you're like, oh, wow, I did that all wrong. But part of what we do, we are really interpretive artists at our core, and collaboration is the greatest pleasure of it, that you become a canvas for other people. And luckily, our painters on this are profoundly good.
That's what's so striking every time you watch an episode and you see all those names at the end. The length of credit is, a credit to the show and the labor of love and the excellence. I mean, I think it's truly extraordinary television in a way that hasn't been seen before, and it's the united by this frenzy of Tolkien fanaticism on set. Every detail painstakingly, meticulously in place, and that's also united us all. And talking about it is a great joy. We've all become very, Tolkien-centric.
I was going to say, who's the most likely of the cast to have like the dog-eared Tolkien on set?
That would be Rob Aramo.
That would be right. I have a very funny photo, actually, of Charlie and Rob on a trip we were taking, and Rob has the Silmarillion, and he's reading it enthusiastically to Charlie, and Charlie's just like, it's about the 50 millionth time that Rob's mentioned the Silmarillion, or the Legendarium, or the...
Thank God for Rob, though.
Thank God for Rob.
On set, Rob, what's happening here? Oh, right.
In a story this vast that will span, sounds like 5 seasons is the plan, like how important is it for you to know the broader story? Do you guys all focus on your own storyline because the rest is almost going to clutter the mind too much? Nazanin,
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
You have a job to do.
I was following everybody else's very closely for the first few scripts, and then it's just become so much that for me, I was like, I actually want the surprises. I want to be, if it didn't have something that directly impacted my storyline, I would try to kind of keep it a surprise.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about first days on a set like this, because it must feel like you're jumping just into the deep end of something very grand and special. Cynthia, I know you started with some pretty intense stuff.
My first day, which I can finally talk about because I've not really been able to talk about it, is the scene on the mountain where I have the blindfold on. So it's kind of a crazy first day to have for many reasons, obviously to be that far along in the story, but also, we helicoptered up to that location. It was a mountain in the South Island of New Zealand. I had never ridden on a helicopter before. My costume wasn't complete. My wig was flying in from somewhere. So it was all sort of coalescing on this first day. And I had nerves because I had never spoken as this person. You do all this research, you read what you have, but I didn't even have all of the scripts leading up to that episode. So, it was one of those challenges that you get as an actor that just due to logistics, it just is what it is. It's not what anybody aims to try and, have be the case. But I really felt the energy and support that day of that core group of actors on the mountain. And then for our amazing director, Charlotte Branston, who directed episodes 6 and 7, that was also her first day. It was Lloyd's first day. Yeah. It was a lot of first days for us. So, it's interesting for me to see it now. I just watched episode 7 myself a couple days ago for the first time, and you sort of have the dual experience of the character you're inhabiting, but then it's just you as a person. There's so many things, I'm on a mountain, I'm in New Zealand, I'm working on Lord of the Rings. I was sort of having a lot of thoughts that day, but yeah, it's incredibly satisfying to see it, and also to know that there was all of this laying of foundation from the story that comes before to get to that point. So, you know, hey, what can you say? Sometimes your first day is you just have to walk from one side of the room to the other, and sometimes your first day is on a mountaintop in New Zealand.
Actors.
Yeah, with a blindfold on.
The good news is I don't think anybody here would have bet, oh, that's clearly the first day. She doesn't know what she's doing yet. No, it's you know what you're doing, clearly. There's so many unique challenges for the roles in a series like this. I mean, Daniel, playing the stranger, you're robbed somewhat of some of the, I don't know, dialogue. Like some kind of key things that, I don't know, most actors relish. Did you find it a unique challenge, an asset in some ways?
I think it became a friend to me. But I think JD and Patrick, who are the showrunners, have done such a great job right from the first audition tape I had to do all the way through that sort of 6-month period of getting the job, of giving me really strong grounding points, a whole set of foundations, which by the time I got to shoot my first day, I sort of felt the stranger was within me, was actually part me. Then we layer on top the costume, the hair and makeup, the movement people that helped me. Actually, the dialogue wasn't an important thing for him to communicate. He sort of communicated it through the pores of his body. He had some energy fizzing, and we aren't quite sure what that energy is, but it was coming off him. And to work with Markella, who played Nori, very early on we had this connection which fizzed, or I felt it fizzed. We'll have to hear whether she agrees. But she takes the mick out of me for saying that all the time. But for me, the communication became something that was sort of innate and non-dialogue based, and a joy, yeah.
For you, Leon, is there like a Numenorian handbook? Is there the background? Do you feel like you need to be an expert? What's the prep in playing Kemen? What do you do when you know you get the gig beyond just working with the script, or is it just it's all in the script? You know what the task is.
A lot of it's in the script,
Yep.
but also there's an amazing team to support us. We had a lore master, we had an amazing dialogue team, movement team, and then Patrick and JD are serious fans themselves. They've really thought all this stuff through. I went back to the Silmarillion. I read everything about Farazon, everything about Numenor, and that gave me kind of footholds. And then I had space to kind of dream around those, and would just start throwing other stuff into the pot and seeing if it tasted good in the stew. And yeah, it started to become clear, because you had all those people supporting you, making the parameters clear, you kind of understood what colors might make sense to add into the mix.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
For you, Nazanin, your character goes through some intense scenes, to say the least, in the course of these first 7 episodes. Some very dramatic moments, some very physical moments that must be taxing for you. What are the ones that stick out from what we've seen thus far that really have, I'm not going to say scarred you, but maybe imprinted upon you in your career as an actor?
Oh, I like the word imprinted, because if it's imprinted we're looking for, then I think episode 2, that orc slaying scene in episode 2, and then the tag on that where she puts...
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. So thrilling to play. A lot of women can relate to this, but a room filled with disbelieving people or disbelieving men, and you're like, okay, I'm going to have to prove myself. And then you go do it, and then you plop that thing down, and you're like, here's the evidence. How do you like me now? So yeah, that made, is forever engraved in my mind as a hero moment that...
Well, it also must, you just hear the reaction here, and that's not isolated. That must just be so gratifying. Again, you've bottled this all up for literally years.
Yeah.
And to see that it's received in the way you probably hoped or dreamed of must be amazing.
It was so thrilling. Again, lifted up by an incredible stunts team.
Yeah.
My stunt doubles, Carly and Jade, were phenomenal. I couldn't have done it without them. I've never done this level of intense stunts work. I had the battle scars to prove it, a lot of hours of training, but I literally couldn't have done it without this team.
Benjamin, the mentality of your, I know I only call you High King now. This is just, it's in your rider, High King.
If you know it's good for you.
Yep. That's why there's a little distance between us. Did you key into this character immediately? Did you know the mentality? Did you understand? Like, what was the key into finding the mentality, the motivations from the start?
I mean, one of the joys of this job is you get paid to read Tolkien. I was a fan to begin
Research
with.
again, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I got to do some work. But I think the reality of understanding what immortality would mean is kind of deeply tragic, and that, you know, we human beings, I find we live our lives tacitly assuming we're going to live forever, that we waste so much time. And what is the inverse of that? What does it mean to live forever and see everyone you know and love die over and over again, and still muster the strength to have hope, to believe in love, to believe in the possibility of the unification of peoples to overcome evil. That's one of the beautiful things that Tolkien understood about the human disposition, and he illustrates it beautifully in the elvish disposition.
Right.
And I really enjoyed, like, just selfishly as a person, as a man, it has enriched my life to think of it in those terms and to study Gil-galad on that level. When I go home and my time is finite, I don't waste it.
Right. See, some big questions can come out of...
Yeah, but that's the beauty of
Yeah.
Tolkien.
Yeah.
It is biblical in that sense. That
Yeah.
every time you approach it, there's something new that you can glean. And, you know, the Silmarillion is certainly like maybe reading the Old Testament, but there's still some great nuggets in it.
Right. I'd love to geek out for a second just on some of the technical side of it, because it is fascinating, just like, I guess, the undertaking of this. For instance, you know, we all know, and we've seen the behind-the-scenes stuff over the years of different films and TV, even Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, the forced perspective stuff, for instance. Sarah, can you talk a little bit about just like what it feels like on set? What are the challenges? Do you get used to sort of like what has to go into a production like this that's unique to it?
Well, I think in terms of the things like the forced perspective and the scale, I mean, they tried very hard to give us as much as possible that working with the other actor, as opposed to, say, a green screen or. So that was really amazing. When we got there, most of us did a thing called Scale Academy, where we saw the different perspectives to try and help us understand. I can't remember any of it, and didn't really get it. But I remember the picture. I remember the pictogram really clearly, and that really stuck with me because I was like, oh, okay, so da-da-da-da. And that really helped. All of that actually really helped. I mean, there's some amazing team behind the scenes who worked all that out for us. So that then often I could, say for example, when I was talking to Dan, he would actually be there. Now he may be further back than it would be in real life, but I could work with him. If it came about that we couldn't do that, then we had the amazing doubles who just are phenomenal at what they do. They're absolute artisans in trying to recreate what we had done with our roles. So they didn't even get to like come up with it themselves, but they not only recreate, but actually give the essence of what we had created. Right. And that's really challenging. And they were fantastic, so fantastic that sometimes I didn't actually know when it was me. When I was seeing some of these things, I was like, is that me or is that? So my hat's off to them. But that's the thing about working on a show like this. The teams that we were working with across the board just made our jobs so much easier. Yeah. And it was a very immersive, incredible experience.
Yeah, they worked out to the decimal the mathematical equation of the scale difference. I think it was 33.33% or something. Wow. So, yeah. Just make that up. No, but it was 33 something. But like they had figured out. So the scene that we have with Owain at dinner, you know, when he's in, his cup is 33.3% bigger, and like the amount of work and craftsmanship that went into it. But I agree that in the preservation of the performance, that it was all in service of this kind of unified vision of telling the same story. And this was just another very sharp tool to do so.
Sometimes it kind of sucked though, because those carts were made down to the last detail. Like inside they had bedrolls, they had saucepans, they had all the things that we would use. Yeah. But that made them really, really heavy. And Marigold is a lot stronger than me. So there was a day on the South Island where we were doing carts in the beautiful migration scene, and myself and Megan Richards and Michaela Kavanagh were swearing our minds out. Luckily that's not in the show, because it was as But oh, that was hard. And that was when I was really like, why are they so dedicated to making everything realistic?
So Sarah has notes for season 2.
Let me act.
New costumes. Who does have the best costume? Who's got the? Oh wow.
It's nice.
Make your case. Let's hear it.
Well, first of all, I have many costumes.
True.
Yeah, well, if
You've
it's
just
good,
got
you
the
only-
one.
Yeah, but if it's good, you got to keep changing out of them.
I mean, I will say, I actually think, certainly up here, I probably spent the most time with the wardrobe department.
I thought you were going to say the most money.
Yeah, well, that's funny too. But Kate Hawley, who was the mastermind of interpreting Tolkien's words and then weaving them into literal clothes and armor, you know, she had an army of people so that these costumes are like couture.
Right.
You have people cobbling shoes. You have, you know, people dyeing, you know, textiles a particular shade. You have embroiderers. You have, you know, I mean, it really was everything. And so every time I would go into wardrobe, you know, I would have a version of part of a costume. There'd be an iteration, and then, you know, somebody would hold something up. They'd kind of pull something, tuck it away. You'd go away. You'd come back a week later. There's a fully realized idea. And so you would see this evolution, but there was always, you know, it was always really about the costumes continuing to tell the story and extension of the character. I mean, I love hearing the detail about, you know, your rings. I have rings too.
They're
They're not
nice.
brass knuckles,
They're
but
very nice.
yeah, but you know, but yeah, I mean, even, and we talk about this all the time, that even the I will say more humble costumes are still incredible, are still, you know, it's the same level of detail.
I mean, it was Kate Hawley's vision, because we talked about how the Half-Wits have remained hidden for so long. Why they actually appear so little in the lore is because they've remained hidden. And her idea was that idea, first of all, that our costumes actually literally, we can hide under them and suddenly blend in with the natural environment. But also the twigs, at first people, I think when they first saw the first episode, they were like, why have I got twigs? But it gradually became really obvious that they actually help us blend into the environment. So we wear different things in our hair depending on what environment we're migrating through. We wear different coloured clothes depending on what environment we're migrating through, so that we can vanish in an instant. I mean, that's incredible. She came up with all of that. And I just found that, I found it truly magical. I enjoyed all that stuff so much.
Would you like to amend your answer now and just?
The sticks are great. No, but we're all saying the same thing.
Yeah,
in
right. It serves the story. It's not about
they
just
are
being
opportunities for a detail that illuminates something.
Yeah.
And you were alluding to my rings. Kate designed these.
Back on the rings now.
Well, have you seen the title of the show, Charlie? It's all about rings. Yeah, it's a theme.
Look,
I've got great rings.
Ben showed up in full costume backstage, and he swore that we made him change.
Yeah.
So.
But I do have to wear this corset. It's an armored corset. I can't complain about a corset because women were forced to wear them for 100 years. But they're really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But also, like, when you put it on, you're like, oh, I'm king now.
It's true.
I can't
It does change your posture. It changes how you move. I mean, also, I feel like we don't talk about this enough, but same for, you know, hair and makeup. Mm-hmm. And obviously there are people, part of our, I'm trying to think within our group, but prosthetics and a lot of practical makeup that are incredibly transformative, especially when you look at the orcs. I think, like, you know, I always think back to the first time, you know, I remember reading the scripts, knowing that there were orcs. And one day in the parking lot, I just happened to pass one of the performers in full orc regalia with their hand being held, because they can't see that well. And it was actually terrifying. I mean, it was shocking. It was shocking, but the level of makeup was that good. Yeah. I mean, and I think, again, we are striving for as much as we can to do things in camera, but then we also have the added layer of all the other elements. To me, it really represents this harmony of the technical aspect of things with the practical aspect of things.
It reminds me of the moment, like you asked earlier, when did you feel like you were in Lord of the Rings? Right. And I remember walking, very similar. You're walking past the tent full of orcs, but one's reading the newspaper, another one's vaping, one's on the phone, one's trying to eat hummus through it, and you're just like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Actually, can I say, I snuck onto the Southland set one night and I hadn't registered what scene they were shooting. I just wanted to come and see. It was when Charlotte was directing, and Alex, the DOP, said, "Oh, come get the best view of this scene. Come and stand behind the camera behind me." And I was like, okay. It was next to a building, and they said, "Action!" And all the orcs came tearing around the side of the building, right at camera, screaming. I had an absolute heart attack. It was terrifying, and they knew that was... Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you've never seen a scarier orc than when they call for lunch. I'm sure we have some great questions from you guys. I think if you raise your hand, I'll call on you, and we've got a mic that'll come to you.
One thing that Tolkien emphasizes in his writing is applicability. So it's not that his work is like an allegory for World War II or World War I or something. It's that the themes of his writings are something that is sort of applicable across time, regardless of historical context. So I wanted to ask, what do you think are sort of the universal themes that you feel are embodied in the show?
I think there's a lot about family. There's a lot about legacy. There's a lot about inherited faults or otherwise. Speaking personally for Celebrimbor, his father and his grandfather, there's a bad gene in there. And what's been interesting for me in investigating him, because he's a very lightly sketched character in the appendices, is how much that can feed into what I do with him. And it's been the luxury about this project. Some of these characters are very lightly drawn by him, and there is a lot of room to discuss and to collaborate and to come up with a version of that. So that's been something. But I think that is, we were talking about it the other day, I think it's something that threads through all the storylines, is family and how ancestry can colour you as you go through your existence.
And adding to that, I think there's parenting in this particular, in the Rings of Power, because I remember with Nazanin and Lloyd, we were all together and we suddenly realised we were three parents in the show. And so you're talking from the perspective of someone who's living up to a father's, father's reputation. And for us, it's from the perspective of how do we parent in a world like this, in a world where darkness is coming. How do you raise children? How do you let them go and do what they need to do? Do you try and stop them, or do you support them? So I'm talking to Nazanin because they're like the two mums, but so I feel like that's an extension of what you're talking about in terms of family.
And that's exactly right. And I also think themes of migration, colonization, and on a very personal note, a lot of it resonates with me in my activism. So there are things that you can draw from it and find inspiration from real life events to play these roles.
With the embrace of the first season now that's finally out, and knowing you have 4 more to go, has the pressure been alleviated somewhat, or do you still feel the pressure going into the next seasons?
It's more. But that's a good thing. I mean, if you're going to do it right. And they make fun of me because I say this line a lot, but I mean it. Pressure is how you make a diamond. Like we welcome the pressure, and there's no pressure from an audience that will match the pressure that we put on ourselves. And it comes from our love of the source material and the respect that we think it deserves. So yeah, but that's the bare minimum. To give it your all.
Hi. So
You
obviously,
Yeah.
thank you. You just like the ears, don't you?
Bias.
So I wondered, firstly, for those of you who are playing characters from Tolkien, obviously some of these characters that are very, very beloved by a lot of people. Like for me personally, possibly my favourite character in the entirety of Tolkien is in the show. So were you aware of that, and how much did you feel the pressure on bringing those characters to life? And also, to those of you who are playing original characters, did you feel a similar kind of pressure to make your character fit into the world, or did you find it more easy because you weren't trying to live up to expectations, sort of thing?
I think with any adaptation of any beloved literature, I know it myself, having experienced it. When you see a version of it presented, you go, "Oh, that's not what was in my heart when I read that." Because reading a book is it's probably the most intensely personal, creative experience you can have. It's just you and the book and the words. So I get that people may go, or great, or that's just right, that's just what I thought. But, again, come back to my character, he is, yet again, I make the point that he wisps through that story on the page. And it's up to me, and again, the huge collaboration on this. It's not just the actor who creates the role; it's everybody, all the heads of department who present to you what you're going to wear, where you're going to live, where you're going to work. So it's with this, it's an extraordinary circumstance. There is license to create in that way, and Tolkien, I believe, welcomed that when he said, "In the future, other minds will continue my vision, might celebrate my vision," whatever the exact quote is. And I think this really honors that on many levels.
And we also, I've got a little more meat than most, but I have the meat. He gives you the answers. And even, we joke about the Silmarillion, but even if it's not directly about your character, it's something they would have known or experienced or have endured. And the answers are there. Just go get them.
I felt well supported. I definitely felt like we had these kind of anchors in place. We had Galadriel, we would have Elrond, we would have characters who carried through, who kind of set the bar, set the tone. And I really trusted the people who were putting the show together to put those counterweights in place, to go, this is how else we flesh out the story, this is how we fill the world. And I really felt when I came on the show that they did a great job of communicating to me what I was holding. The big joy for me in watching the show now that it's out is I spent all my time in Numenor. So I had a very limited sense of what the whole experience was going to be. I was focused on my little corner of the world. And it's been such a thrill to see how all of those flavors come together in the tapestry, like you said. I really feel like they knew what they were doing, and I'm excited to continue.
I also just want to say this is the first season, and my hope for the entire series is it can be considered as a whole. So in the same way you read a book, you don't want to just isolate a chapter and think that that's going to be the representation of the entire story. So obviously there's a certain amount of patience that you're going to have. There's a lot of story to tell, a lot of characters, a lot of worlds, but I think for all of us, we have awareness of what people are saying out there, but we also have to have a laser focus. I try not to think too much about, that idea of pressure. Again, pressure can be a good thing. It can be something you utilize and harness, but I at the end of the day, I have to sort of honor the character, honor this material, and really focus and try to tune out everything else and just try to stay true to this world.
And Tolkien's work was so dense and vast, and we are so conditioned to want it now. We're going to binge it. I'm going to click on this, and I'll have the package in 20 minutes. And there are things in this, and it's a testament to J.D. and Patrick. There are things in it that when you go back and watch the first season, and you're in the fourth season, there are things in the first and second episode where you go, oh, that makes in its totality. It is even richer in the same way that Tolkien saw the world. You're going to be happy. Relax.
You've got the team and you've got the plan.
Yeah.
You got the time. And
Now, play ball.
Yeah, exactly.
Famous Tolkien quote.
Famous. Let's go over here.
This question is for Sarah, but I think applies to a lot of you guys. I'm very curious about the accents on the show, like how the decisions were made. Like, was it just already all there for you guys when you came in, or like how were those decisions made of like what's a Harfoot accent and what's a Numenor accent?
Well, for me, it had better been there when I came in because I only got the job 3 days before. I had to fly to New Zealand and then I was on set 2 weeks later. So I got there and it had all been sorted well before I got there. But we had an amazing dialect coach, Leith McPherson, who, so the minute I landed, I was like, give me her number. And we worked extensively with her on the Harfoot dialect. And as you would know, you've watched it, it's based on Southern Irish, but it is its own dialect. And she loved the warmth of that sound. So we talked a lot about that, the warmth and the kind of friendly feeling of that dialect. And then we put that into the Harfoot world. It was a whirlwind. So I personally think my dialect got better. So I shouldn't really say that, but because literally that first day I'd only had like a couple of weeks. But I think there was a real thought about differentiating the world through dialect. So unlike some other adaptations where the dialects have remained sort of fairly much in the same area, you'll obviously notice in our show that they've really broadened it. And I think that gives a real sense of these different realms. And I think that for me gives it this incredible flavour. Each realm a different flavour, as well as costumes and everything else is that sound of their voices. Yeah.
Hi. First off, I love the show so much. Like I literally was like crying in my bed watching it. I just wanted to know, like, besides the books, do you guys feel influenced at all by like the films, like Lord of the Rings films and the Hobbit films, in your like what you see the world as and how you like built your character?
I would say that I didn't actively try and work from there. We were really conscious about we're starting with Tolkien's text, we're building something new from there. That said, I grew up in Wellington. Middle-earth has been inescapable my whole life. And I really felt when I picked up those audition slides, I was like, this is somewhere in me from just being around it since I was in primary school. Everybody knew somebody who worked on those movies. And when I was at drama school, they were making The Hobbit in that city. So then Martin Freeman was at my flat one day at a party and I was like, so I can't deny that. And I think all of us would say that those movies were major. And they influence all of culture. I'm very glad they exist, and I'm very glad to be telling a new story now.
What I love about sorry.
No, I was only going to say, but also I think we benefited because our amazing crew, came from New Zealand, across the board. So our movement coach, the people that worked, everybody, and they also lived and breathed Middle Earth for a good portion of their lives. Yeah. And so, I mean, they were incredibly knowledgeable, and the support. I mean, they knew more than I'll ever know. So many of them, and so they were as dedicated, if not more, than any other person coming on the show to make sure that this was a beautifully told Tolkien story because it had been part of their lives for so long.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to add that I think one of the things that people loved about the movies was they were so reverent to Tolkien. Like the people making them really cared about Tolkien. So actually, we were influenced by movies. We've all probably watched the movies, but where did they get influenced? Tolkien. So it all feels like it stemmed from Tolkien, which was the joy of the project.
Does anybody here want to just act out episode 8 for us? We're all friends now. You owe it to us. What can we expect? Can you tease anything about the season finale?
You don't want us to do that.
Well,
I don't want to lie. I was the one that's.
I'm dying to see it myself.
Yeah, for us, so I mean, we all laugh about this still, but when we received the last script for episode 8, it was heavily redacted. There were many blank pages. If it didn't involve you, then it didn't involve you.
They don't trust us.
So we are also excited to see the finale because genuinely, there's some things I just straight up don't know.
Right. Yeah.
So
I'm
excited.
Sour.
Yeah.
It's only by wearing him down on the costume stuff.
I'm tired of wearing this course.
Truly, congratulations, guys. This is such an undertaking. The bar was so high, and you've more than lived up to it. And it's a real testament to, as we've been talking all night about this ginormous crew behind and in front of the camera, that all of you, your characters are so resonant and wonderful, and the performances are fantastic. And enjoy this ride. The ride continues. Thank you for sharing it with us tonight, and thank you guys so much for coming out to enjoy it.